Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I'm your host, Andrew Davis. And this episode is brought to you by my sponsor, Sahal. The signs of the time are upon us. The dead have been disturbed, the water currents have reversed, quakes are now standard, and the winds are now deadly. It is an awesome Kickstarter. The art is fantastic. The book, I think, is almost fully funded or almost fully funded, and it's by my friend Dwayne Madry. Really cool book. I recommend everybody check it out. It's in the description up above. So go check that Kickstarter out. Also, I am going to be running a very special advertising deal on Free Comic Book Day, and I'll have more details about that on Thursday night around 9 o'clock. So if you're interested in advertising on his show, it is andrewedavis@hotmail.com. Email me for rates as well as I like comic supplies, and I have an affiliate code with BCW Supplies. So use code POPANIMECOMICS to get 10% off your entire order because bags and boards are expensive. So I'm not going to bore everybody with the rest of my sponsors here because I have with me comic creator Russ Allen, who has CatCat and Piggygirl issue 1 on Kickstarter right now. So
That's right.
welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited to have you on. And I saw your post where people were not exactly being supportive. So I figured I'd say, hey, you know what is, let me see if he wants to be on my show. And obviously, you got a cool Kickstarter going on. So, what is the basic premise of Cat, Cat, and Piggy Girl for those who are hearing about it for the first time?
It is, I apologize. I was sharing my last share out while you were talking. It
It's all
is
good. It's all good.
hey man, you got to share. Hashtag always share, always promote. So Cat Cat and Pinky Girl is an exciting project, man. I'm not really a comic book writer. I'm more of an author. I do prose, not so much an artist. So I keep to the words because that's my fancy art. So, I published this book. I did a comic book script for another book for Wendy Steen Shaner for her Luna Tales, which will be coming out in a month or so. And when we went and visited my friend Steph and Carrie for my wife's birthday, we were up there hanging out, and she's like, "Russell, why don't you write a comic book story for kids and sell copies of it? We'll do a cover, and you can raise money for CB4K." So I kind of like to back it up a little bit from this story and just kind of tell everybody what CB4K is all about. So it's a charity that I found out about a few months after my son's second open heart surgery at 2.5. Um, when he had a second open heart surgery, he was in a lot of pain. We were in this room all day long waiting to find out what was going on. We finally go upstairs and we're like, how do we console a 2.5-year-old that won't sit still when it's got their chest still broke open because they don't sew them up right away, in case they're swelling. And he's just causing himself more pain. And we're like, pulling our hair out. What do we do? And the nurse comes in with this Spider-Man Hot Wheel. And I'm like, that's awesome because he just all of a sudden forgets about everything, starts rolling around the Spider-Man car. My wife and I sit down, we talk. We're able to de-stress, be there for each other, and just kind of calm down for the day and not have to deal with him for a little bit. Which I don't mean that to be mean. It's just we needed that time away. He needed that time to get out of his head and, you know, normalize after having an open heart surgery. And so I look for something to give back because I'm all about giving back tenfold. Sorry, I'll turn my Wi-Fi off. I'm starting to lag out. So, I'm all about giving back tenfold. So I'm like, what can I do to try to give back? Give parents what we received, give back to other children. And I found comic books for kids through a comic book retailer. On Saturdays, they did this little raffle thing where they sold spots for $10. You got put in a raffle for a slab or a book or something that they had. And so I was like, this is awesome. So I started giving weekly. 2019, I met Mark, which is the owner and creator of CB4K, and told him, I said, I appreciate everything you do. Uh, Everything you've done, helps our son, helps us as parents. You don't understand, how important it is what you do, and I really appreciate it. So fast forward, I kickstart this. I have a shirt up on the Kickstarter that was for charity. Shh, don't tell Kickstarter. All all pieces of this shirt that sold, I was giving the money to CB4K. Well, my Kickstarter failed, and I was bummed. I was like, this was a failure. I was pretty down about it. And then the next day, Mark gets online, sees the T-shirt, and he's like, has his daughter reach out to me. I call him up, and he's like, "How would you like to be the official T-shirt supplier for CB4K?" And that's where it all started. So last year, I became the official T-shirt supplier is CB4K. I also started doing Russ Explode Studios charity auctions for CB4K, where uh, artists, authors, all kinds of people in our community donate stuff to me to auction off. Last year we raised like a little over $4,000 for them, so that was awesome. And so uh, fast forward back to November, Carrie's like, you should write this book for CB4K. So I thought about it. I'm like, man, that's a great idea, but what if we wrote a book that was catered to children with illnesses? What if we wrote a book that the superheroes were kids with disabilities, kids who had issues? Because, granted, comic books for kids has Boom Studios, Dark Horse, IDW, Pop, Pez, all these places sponsor CB4K. They send them books and stuff. None of the stuff's really catered for ill children. And so I sat on it and I waited months. I couldn't figure out an idea. And then one night it dawned on me. I'm like, CatCat and Piggy Girl. My son got CatCat when he was 11 months old. My daughter got Piggy when she was a month old. And that's the one thing that they care about more than anything in this world. No matter what's happening, they have to have them with them at all time. And I got to thinking, other kids in the hospital are going to have their stuffed animal with them. What if I wrote the story about Roderick and Adriana? You got a child that has had two open heart surgeries. There's a lot of stuff that he can't do. But what if he gains superpowers? They find out that their stuffed animals have superpowers. Somehow that power is transferred to them and they become superheroes. Because the message here is even though you have an illness, even though you have a disability, even though you're a critical illness child and you may not be able to do things your friends are able to do, you're still a superhero because you're still capable of great things. So that's kind of how the story was born. And I got really excited. I wrote it. The first story kind of touches on bullying, which is a huge thing with me. Roderick's 7 years old now. He's in first grade. And kids don't understand why he can't play sports, why he can't play baseball or touch football or, stuff like that, because he's got this cadaver artery in his chest. It's brittle. It could shatter. It could knock it loose. There's all this stuff. So he can't have contact sports. And so, it just kills me that kids, through not understanding that, they automatically lash out at other children. So this isn't only a great book for children in the hospitals to sit there and read, to where they're going to be like, hey, I've got my Rhino with me. I could be Rhino Boy. And they write their own comic and they draw it out, or they have adventures in their head, because that's what it's all about. It's about escapism. That's why we read. That's why we play video games. That's why we watch movies, is because we want escapism. We want to walk in someone else's shoes, because, pardon my French, because their life's shittier than ours at this point. We think our lives are bad, and then we go and watch these movies and like, oh man, I don't have it bad. This guy's got it bad. And so, you live vicariously through someone else's life while you're going on this adventure.
So,
And
so,
then
so
I
to
have,
to even dive into this further, and sorry for interrupting, but
no, you're fine.
obviously you have, a kid who has a very serious heart issue. And obviously, where did you even say, hey, this is even a possibility to do a comic book? Because, and to do a kid's comic book and then do it for the charity, because that's really what I think makes this different, is that there is the charity element to it. It's also an understanding, and it's the idea that you're seeing yourself. If you're a kid, and every kid has a stuffed animal, regardless whether they have a disability or an issue, every kid has had a stuffed animal that's been given to them, and now they can see themselves through this. And so what was like that even idea to say, hey, why don't I do a comic book? And even the impetus and even to take on that task, because I wouldn't have thought it to do a comic book per se.
Well, and it goes back to Carrie saying, hey, why don't you write a comic book script for kids, and it was just going to be a book that I sold, and then the money that was raised was going to go to comic books for kids. It was that night, 2 months later, I was laying in bed here, and I was like, I've got it. My wife's like, you got what? COVID, the clap? What, what have you got? And then, like, I've got the idea. I'm like, what is the one thing Roderick and Adrian always take to the hospital is CatCat and Piggy. And that's where it all grew. I'm like, instead of me selling the copies to raise money to send the CP4K, because even though they're sponsored by all these companies, they still have to pay for shipping. Now, granted, they have now over 200 hospitals across the world. We have the United States, we have Canada, and we have the UK. So, all the donations that come through the website or the cons that Mark goes to, or that's donated through the auctions, that goes towards shipping. And I was kind of like, I don't want to do the same old thing and just keep sending Mark money over on PayPal and, being like, hey, all these people helped, shout out of thanks to them. And, I'm like, I want to do something better. I want to make a mark. Uh, I want to do something for these kids that they don't get now through these companies that they get stuff from. And my critical illness book geared strictly towards them. It covers bullying and all this other stuff. And that's really kind of where things just kind of grew. And it even grew outside of that. I was like, all right, I'm gonna write this book for these kids to give them an inspiration to, excuse me, draw their own comic or write their own story or imagine going on these adventures. But I'm like, I'm gonna create a page, CatCat and Piggy Girl, where these kids can ask their parents if they can post pictures of them in the hospital with their stuffed animal. And so in issue 2, I'm gonna draw one of those children from that page. I'm gonna put them all on a wheel. I'm gonna spin it. What kid it lands on, him or her and their stuffed animal will be a sidekick in issue 2. Then issue 3, I'm going to do the same thing. In each issue, I'm going to incorporate another child. So these children are not only going to be inspired, they're going to have hope, they're going to have strength. I'm like, this is a great idea to get them excited because they're going to be like, they're going to get to the end of the book and they're going to find out that there's this page and they could be a sidekick in their own comic book and they can show all their friends. And then their friends will be like, wow, that's cool. You're in your own comic book. So I'm like, this thing just kind of like grew out of control. I'm like, I'm the idea man. I just start spitballing. And then, I'm like that little snowball that starts out at the top of the mountain. And then by the bottom, it's like this giant iceberg that's just like, look at me. So,
There's a lot of stuff to talk about with this, and one of the things
yeah,
is that I think you came up with the idea at the right time in a lot of ways, because I think 5 years ago this would not be possible, and where Kickstarter is now a legitimate platform, it has enough traffic. It's also the idea where you could really test ideas. We were speaking
yeah,
off air where I launched a podcast Kickstarter and I successfully funded it. And I don't think that would have been possible 5 years ago. And we're starting
absolutely
to see
not.
really big numbers now on Kickstarter. We're starting to see a lot of celebrities on Kickstarter, a lot of big companies, and even small companies. And so, what was this like? Because you came up with the idea and you're in the right time where this is the golden age of Kickstarter by definition. And so, what is that
Well,
like? Because obviously the idea is working, because 5 years ago, I don't think it would have worked. And I don't think it would have worked for half the people, if not 90% of the people in the comic world.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was scary. It was absolutely scary because, look, I originally wasn't going to put this on Kickstarter. I was originally going to outright sell. I was going to order 100 copies. I was going to sell those 100 copies, then take the money I made off the 100 copies, run a single print run for as many as I could get, and send them to CB4K. And so I got to thinking, because here's my big hang up with why I didn't want to do a Kickstarter. Kickstarter takes 10%. I wanted every bit of this to go to the kids. And I was really upset. It was really drawing on me thinking about 10% of this is getting taken away from the kids. But then the more and more I thought on it, and I kept bouncing back and forth. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. I got to thinking, you know what? That 10%, that's advertising. That's 10% of a fee that I'm paying. Not only is the comic book getting advertised to people all over the world, people that probably wouldn't see it if I just posted it on Facebook, but people are seeing cb4k.org that may not have known about it beforehand, and now they do. And even if they don't buy this book and help me get more copies into the hospitals and the cancer centers across the nation and in Canada and the UK, they at least know about it later on. They'll be like, oh yeah, I want to give back to something good. What was that one Kickstarter? CatCat and Piggy Girl. They can go back and look, find the link to cb4k.org. They may need to go back a year from now and donate money to them. So it was all about Kickstarter's going to get me a further reach. Kickstarter's going to, advertise it all over. I might get a project we love and get on the list, or people are going to see this under the projects we love. And it was getting the seed out there that CB4K exists. It has existed for uh, 5 years now, and so I was really excited when I launched. It launched with a project we love. I couldn't have had such a greater honor of launching this project. When I submitted it to Kickstarter and I got the email, they said, we love the concept. This is a great idea. We're really excited for you, and we hope this works. I was really scared. That's the other thing I was scared about. One, is it gonna fund? Am I gonna be able to make back the money I'm losing that 10%, and getting this out there and advertising it to be able to print what I was wanting to print and send to the kids beforehand, is just printing 100. Yes, we far exceeded that, and I'm super excited about that. And two, I was really scared. Kickstarter really doesn't like that C word, charity. And so I'm like, I worded it very carefully in saying, you're buying the book, the profits I make from that book, I'm using to overrun books to send to the hospitals and cancer centers. So basically, I'm saying you're buying a book and my profits, I'm buying books for a charity. And I'm
So,
like,
so to even go further into this, because obviously I do want to talk about it. Obviously, I came out to Kickstarter for a few reasons. A bunch of people said, "Hey, we want to support what you're doing, and we want just a better way how to, sort of give you money and support your project." And then also, what wound up happening is that I looked at it and said, "Look, it's a cool platform to be on right now, where it is I view Kickstarter very much as a social media platform, and I don't view it as a crowdfunding platform anymore
it is
because
a social media platform.
it's more so that than anything else because you can communicate. I have a direct communication with 38 people. Whether they
Yep.
want to directly communicate back with me is up to them, but I can now directly communicate, and I don't like go bother them all that much. I should have maybe 3 updates a year now, or that's the goal. Saying, "Hey, what's up, everybody?" Just checking in, things like that. But the
Well,
idea is,
that's the number one question always is people always ask is Indiegogo or Kickstarter? My big thing is Kickstarter, and you nailed it with saying it's a social media platform because it really is. You have direct contact with all of your backers. You have direct contact after the fact. The campaign's over. You run a campaign 2 years later. You can go back to that campaign and message all those people and say, "Hey, I got something new. I got something fresh out," and they can follow you on Kickstarter. But see, Indiegogo is more like a store. You go on there and you look through somebody's list of stuff and you buy it. It takes the money and that's it. There's nothing really outside of that. But Kickstarter's kind of like when it's over, you can go on there and you can put a link to your website. You can write a little bio. You can change the color scheme, and you can set up this really cool page that even though this campaign's over, people can go to it and go look at what happened after the campaign ended. Did the creator take this to another level? Is it on their website? What have they done since then? You have all these tools at your disposal to reach out to the backers that supported you. And then when you launch Project Two, it alerts all of them, hey, you backed this person before, check out what they're doing now. And that's the nice thing about Kickstarter. I back something for $1. Say it's something I'm not into, but I support the creator, and I'm like, hey man, I'm gonna throw $1 at your project because I'm buying you 328 emails. Because when I back that for $1, the 328 people that follow me get an email, hey, Russell Allen backed such and such project, and now they can go click on that email. And so that's one of the big things as a podcaster and as an indie supporter. I always try to hammer into people's heads. You don't have to go back a creator on their digital tier or their physical tier to help that creator out. If it's somebody you truly believe in or you believe in what they're working towards, a creator's never going to message you and go be like, you're a POS because you only backed me for $1. No, that's never going to happen because we know when you backed us for that $1, everybody that follows you just got an email and you're helping us. And so I'm never going to turn somebody away and be like, oh, well, I have a few dollars. Hey, if you could donate 50 cents, if it didn't have to be whole dollar amounts, I wouldn't care if you donated 50 cents to it
oh, I
because
got no problem if
no,
what's crazy about me is that in season two, I did 172 guests. Let's say half of them threw me $1 a piece. That's $90. That is
exactly.
basically it's a little less than half of StreamYard. It's $30 shy of half of what StreamYard costs me. But guess what? You know what it is? If somebody got me halfway to my StreamYard costs, you know, is that means I have more money to put back into this show. If
Yeah,
my
you got more money to buy a new mic. You got more money to buy a better computer. You got more money to buy a better camera. You know, and it's the same way with the Kickstarter project because you throw that dollar at that project, say three people that follow you back it. Your dollar just garnered three new backers that may not have backed that project, and it was only because you backed that dollar. And that's why I say, you know, nobody's ever going to be offended if you back for a dollar, if you back for $5. You may not, you know, it's saying, hey, I'm not really into what you're doing, but I support you. I support your cause. I support you as a creator. I support you as a person. And I hope everybody that follows me goes and checks it out.
I mean, it's
And
weird
then
for
if,
me because obviously I'm a big supporter saying, look, if a project's not for you, and I've said this so many times, I've probably said it almost 400 times now, where, it is not every project is for me. I am not a fan of Westerns. I'm sorry. If you have a Western, it's nothing personal. They bore me to death. But you know what it is? I might throw a dollar if I find it interesting. But you know, let's say I gave and I backed your first issue, but you didn't earn my money. You might not get me for a second issue, but I at least will attempt on a digital level your first issue, which I think
yeah,
is fair. I think on a first issue, I'm willing to at least experiment. But also, there's plenty of people that I said, hey, let me just give you a dollar. Because you know what it is? I don't know if it's going to help you, but you know what it is? Maybe it will. Maybe if 50 people gave you a dollar a piece, well, that's $50.
well, and it's not just that. I mean, you know, the monetary value does stack up. If you know, like you said, if you have 100 people that really aren't into what you're doing and they give a dollar, it's $100. Plus, you got thousands of people now that got emails that are going to go look at the project and may garner you full pledges. Here's the biggest thing. It drives the algorithms. You know, the more people that look at the project, that read the project, that click on the link, the more people that are, you know, if you have 7 people that back it for a dollar, that's more than Joe Schmo that's gotten one backer for $30 because you got 7 backers and they only got one. And that's how the Kickstarter algorithms work. It goes off a backer and money. It's a combination of the two. So even though you may not be contributing monetarily to the Kickstarter, you're also helping more people to see the project because you're bumping up the algorithms by putting them further in the list. Like when we first launched, we didn't make a crap ton of money. I think we were at like $500. And there was plenty of other Kickstarter projects out there that were, you know, it got $10,000 on the first day, but we were number 2 on the list for KickTrack for the first 5 days of launch. We were in the top 10. And it was because people were sharing. It was because people were clicking the link. It was because we were getting a $5 pledge here or a $10 pledge there, and we were getting a higher backer count. You know, so all these things go into play to help a creator out. You know, by backing it for a dollar, you may truly think you're not really doing anything, but you're doing a lot for us. So that's something, like I said, I try to drive home, and anybody that comes and watches my show, that's one thing I see at the end of the show. You know, back this creator if you can. If you can't, throw them a dollar. You have no idea how much that helps. And if you can't afford a dollar, share it out. Shares are another big thing. You know, when you run a project, after about the first 5 days, Facebook's like, all right, we've heard enough about your stuff. All right, we're just gonna brush you off to the side so nobody can see you anymore. So you kind of lose that momentum because nobody can see your posts. So when you have fresh people that see this stuff and they're like, hey, that's a really great idea. I don't really believe in it, or I don't really have the money, or I don't really, I'm not into what they're doing. I'll at least give them a share. That's where that really comes into play and helps a lot too, because you're sharing to not only your
Yeah.
friends, which would normally not ever see it, but you're helping me get out of like the Facebook dust, as you would call it. You know, you're the guy that's driving behind the big school bus driving through the desert, and you're like in the cloud behind them, like Mad Max style. Nobody can see you. You know, that's kind of what happens on
Because
Facebook.
it gets very interesting with social media and algorithms and all that stuff at this point, where it's obviously, I mean, I am very aggressive on Facebook and, pushing things out, but it is crystal clear to me that, you know, there's definitely something wonky about it. And it gets tricky once you start going into this and then you enter the dead zone. So if you're running a campaign, weeks, 2 and 3 are usually rough in most
Yeah,
campaigns.
absolutely. You hit the lull is what they call it. You hit the 2 week lull in between where nobody really sees the project. You don't really get a whole lot of pledges. I mean, luckily, one thing I can say that I've been very grateful for this campaign is we've maintained one or two backers a day. Today's been the first day. We haven't gained any traction as far as backer count or pledges towards the campaign. But I'm still keeping it strong, trying to share it out there because one of the things I haven't mentioned yet before is I'm passionate about this because not only am I a father to a critically ill child, and I've seen the benefit not only for the child but as a parent for what this does. But 100% of the profit from this campaign of CatCat and Piggy Girl is going towards overrunning the print run to send to CB4K to distribute to all the hospitals and cancer centers across the nation. And I'm going to keep out 50 or 100 books. And we've got two children's hospitals here local in St. Louis. One of them is Cardinal Glen, and that's where my son has all of his open heart surgeries. And then there's St. Louis Children's Hospital. And my goal is I'm going to either take the books up there and say, hey, I'd love to, mask up, gown up. I want to go around and hand these out to kids, sign them for them because I may be a nobody, but the kids, if you would walk in and say, "Hey, I wrote this comic book," and you give it to them, and then you say, "Would you like me to sign it?" To them, you're a celebrity. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be, some nobody that walked in off the street, but to them, you're a celebrity. I found that out the hard way with this book. One of my coworkers bought my book from me and took it home and let his son read it. And his son's like, "Dad, can I go to work with you? I really want to I've never met a real author before." And I just laughed, at the innocence of a child. And it really made me think with this project, that would be really cool to be able to go up there and walk around and distribute copies and make these kids, feel special because to them, I'm a celebrity. I came in, I gave them, I'm this super professional comic book creator that made this really cool book that I came in and gave to them. And then I even signed it for them, and then they go back and tell all their friends. But, I'm just a guy that has a critical illness child just trying to send the love back tenfold. So, that's one thing I want to especially mention is, 100% of this is going to that. I'm not keeping a penny. Everybody that's worked on this project, I wrote the script, Chuck Pino edited it, Steph and Carrie Ann did a cover. Rodney did the main cover, Rodney Fike did, and he also did the interior illustrations and the coloring. And then it's going to be lettered by Jason Meadows. And we also had April Grady Reyna and CB Zane were kind enough to. I reached out to them and said, "Hey, do you have time to do a cover?" And they said, "Absolutely. We're always willing to help you out with this because we know this means the world, and you're doing great things." So everybody's donated their time, they've donated their art, and 100% of this is going to the kids. So I don't want anybody to think, "Hey, how much of this?" It's like you go and give to the Salvation Army, you give them $1, and they're like, it's really only like 11 cents actually goes towards what they're raising the money for. That's not it here, folks. We're doing 100%. 100%.
So we even talk about this because obviously, it is tricky when you go into a charity book on Kickstarter. And not to go into brass tacks per se, but there is a concept where there is collector market and also the idea of exclusivity versus, massively overprinting a book. And so, how are you balancing that? Because I think that's a major concern, and also it's the charity element of that as well, where I don't not to play devil's advocate, but people get very nervous sometimes with comic book charity stuff, and people have been burned in the past with it. So obviously, you're not making any money, but also, how are you sort of? If I go and pick up a Steph Wilson cover, one of the things that's always concerning is that how many copies of that book are going to be around.
It depends on how much money we raise. So I plan on splitting it 4 ways. So if say I'm able to print 4,000 copies, I'm going to do 1,000 copies of each book. Um, the way I've tried to explain it before is there's no exclusivity to this book. I made no attempts to doing trade and virgin and this and doing metal and holofoil and I kept it simple. We have four covers, all four are trade dresses. It's not about the book; it's about the charity. You're giving up coffee for a week at Starbucks to help kids in need, and you're getting a book and stretch goals out of it. A book that you can read to your kids, a book that you can give to the neighbor kid and maybe get them into comics, a book you can give your niece, your nephew, your grandkid, your cousins, whatever it be. You could donate it to the school, and they can read it to the class. It's not about the book. Everybody has one thing that they like to give to or that they want to do, or, maybe you're a Steph Wilson cover collector and you want to be a completionist. This is another cover that Steph Wilson has done, but there is no exclusivity to this whatsoever. That was not a factor in anything to do with this. It's basically you're supporting a charity. All these copies are going to kids. You're getting a book, you're getting stretch goals, and you're getting our things. When I do the page, I'm going to set up a thank you page. So for everybody who's backed the book, whether at a physical or you just, you threw $1, it doesn't matter what you did. There's going to be a thank you page. I'm going to put everybody's names on there. That way when these kids go and, they post their picture, they're going to see the outpouring of people that said, hey, we want to help these kids. Because one of my big things with this too that I want to touch on a little bit is, when I'm gone and Mark's gone, who's going to carry the torch? When I started doing these Russ Explode Studios charity auctions for CB4K, you would not believe how many people messaged me wanting to send stuff for the charity auctions because they either had open heart surgery when they were a child, they had cancer when they were a child, they were in the hospital constantly for some kind of issue as a child, and they were so upset that something like this did not exist back then. And that's the words that come out of their mouth. I wish there was something like this when I was a child. I want to support this 100%. So that's another thing that through this comic book, they're going to go out to hundreds and thousands of children all over the U.S. and hopefully we can get some to Canada and the U.K. for them to hand out. And they're going to see CB4K. And my hope is that, 10, 20 years from now, they're going to remember that and they're going to seek out the charity and remember how much the charity benefited them. It gave them hope and strength in the hospital, and that they can be there behind us to pick up the torch and carry this charity on. That's one thing I worry about is the longevity of this. It's not going to be around forever if we can't help the people who it benefits. Because if we benefit them, they're going to remember that. It's kind of like the whole pay it forward thing. Uh, and that's one of the aspects that I really worry about. But going back to what you said, there's no exclusivity to it. The only exclusivity to it is you're getting these cool stretch goals. One of the things is there's OA all in the add-ons. So, that's something exclusive that you can get from the campaign. You can get, one of one original art pieces. I think there's 3 left. There's a Vampirella 4 slab up there and a 6. That's out of my personal collection. There's all kinds of cool stuff in the add-ons. And a lot of that stuff's gone right away. Like I put 2 Steph Wilson original art pieces. They were gone in 5 seconds. I didn't even get to make the Facebook post. I'm like, all right, guys, the stuff is gone. So, it's been awesome. It's been really cool. So, if anybody else wants to donate anything, throw that out there real quick. If you're an artist, you got pieces laying around that you haven't been able to sell after 6 cons, and you're just like, whatever, you throw it in the back of your portfolio. You want to send it to me to put in the add-ons, I am open for any of that because there's no overhead. If I sell $100 OA piece, that's $100 worth of books that's going towards the kids. So for anybody out there that, if you want to go check out, going back to the end question of, people have been burned from charities before, absolutely go check out cb4k.org. That's the letter CB, and then the actual number 4, the letter K.org. Check out the website. Look at all the letters from the hospitals, the pictures of the children with the stuff that they've sent them. Look at the sponsor page. Holy cow, look at the sponsor page and look at all these great companies that support them. But better yet, reach out to Mark and ask him if he knows who I am. And he'll tell you about the thousands of dollars that I've been sending over to him, the great help that this has been to helping them, because I'm totally transparent, folks. You can go to the Russ Explode Studios charity auctions page. Every time I do a fundraiser, I post the pictures of my PayPal sending it to Mark. Because I don't want to ever be that guy that, Timmy's Whisper in the Jungle.
Because there's a reason why I'm asking this, and if you're
Yeah,
in the know, you're in the know of there was an incident, and if you're in the know, you know. If you're not in the know, you don't know. And there's been a incident that has definitely raised questions, and so this is why, and this is why I'm asking, and you know what I'm referring to, right?
if it was for two people that had COVID, then I think we're on the same page.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes. I was hoping we were going to use a code, but we could use that code instead.
Yeah,
My audience understands how I speak in code. I was just being
yeah, yeah,
silly
yeah.
and I drop Richard.
No, hey, you know what? I totally understand you. And after that incident happened, before then, I was already posting my PayPal's. I mean, that's something I've been big on from the start. I have nothing to hide. People know me like an open book. I've had a cancer scare 2 years ago. That's what led to this. This was like, hey, you know what? What's the worst thing I regret not doing? I regretted not publishing my book. I always wanted to be an author. I wrote this badass book, and I never published it. And so this was my dying thing. I'm like, if I die in a month of cancer, I did the one thing that I regretted not doing the most. And I left behind something for my kids to read and have a piece of me, because our family is in here. I went back and rewrote this. And so and then I went back to work 3 days after the COVID shutdown, and they said you may or may not have cancer, and we will let you know when we open back up. My third day back, I got hit head on. A lady ran a light, and I blew 3 discs in my back. So I've been up and down. But one thing I've always been is transparent. With the CB4K auctions, I always post the PayPal's. I'm like, hey, we raised $1,500. You can be damn sure within a week whenever, because I hold on to money. Now, mind you, people, I do hold on to money when I ship uh, auction stuff for one reason. If you get your stuff damaged, I'm not going to expect that I'm not going to expect you to let me keep the money just because you gave it to charity. If you want your money back, I've got it still to send back to you. But once everything reaches everybody, I send it over. Then when this reaches everybody, I send this chunk over. So you might see it in 2 or 3 different payments, but that's to protect myself and the charity. I don't want anybody ever being like, oh man, I bought this super sweet Lady Death print that you had in a glass frame for $200 and it came and it was shattered and the print was all cut up and this guy said he already sent my $200. No, so that's not. So yeah, I break it up just to cover my ass and to cover their asses. But no, I'm totally transparent. You can go to the page right now, folks. You can look at it. The last one I sent over was it was $300 and $800 for CB4K day. It was awesome. We raised $800 for the kids, and at $25 a box of stuff, that was 32 boxes to hospitals in one day. So that was freaking phenomenal. So thank you to everybody that
Amazing.
donated to that.
That's fantastic. So I do want to talk about rewards though.
Yeah,
So obviously,
absolutely.
you get the digital copy of the book. So if you say, "Hey, look, you know what it is? I just want my entire pledge, minus Kickstarter's fees, to go straight to the charity and all that stuff." You could get a digital copy, and you're going to be stoked to read it. But then you can get into the fun stuff, and hopefully, I have the right order. But this is Rodney Fike and Sean Forney,
Yep,
right?
that's the Fike Forney cover. So that was
Yes.
the lines and the inks were done by Rodney and it was colored by Sean Forney. Yep, you can get that for $30. That includes the book, the digital copy, and all unlocked stretch goals. And all profits from that book will go towards printing extra copies as well as the rest of the books.
And then there's this one right here, which
Yep,
is,
that's Stevie Zane's.
and so that's another one. And then this is the most
That's Steph
tame.
and Carrie Ann.
This
Yep.
is the most tame Steph Wilson cover ever, by far.
I know, right? Look for the circle templates. I don't see any.
Oh my god! Just I saw this and I'm like, man, this thing is tame as
Yeah,
like.
I know, right? This thing should go in the Smithsonian Museum. Like everybody should buy this copy just so there's proof that Steph did a non-shear, non-circle template cover. Like it happened, folks. And this is it right here. So you got to buy it. This is against nature here. I mean, I don't know
So
how it
I
should
want to
be.
do something with Steph Wilson at some point, and what I want to do is I want him to draw a man.
Hey, I already did that too. I got his first really tame children's cover, and look at that right there. That's Steph Wilson in my book right there. There's a man.
Okay, I want to do a man who's shirtless.
Oh my gosh. Oh my, you know what? You should do the guy from I Can't Believe It's Not Butter, that blonde haired bodybuilder looking dude. I don't know who it is, but he's got that fancy accent. I can't believe it's not butter.
Oh my god, it's gonna be so ridiculous if I do that Steph Wilson cover and like you just like reimagine it and you're like, I just want a guy. And then what you do is that you have because sometimes there's like two versions that he does, and then you do you could have so much fun with it. You could have like a female who is similar to the guy. It could be brilliant. It could be such a brilliant set for a Kickstarter. And I might do it for the my campaign in November. I'm thinking about it because if there was one person to do a cover for me, it's Steph Wilson. Because I think it'd be hilarious. It just does like a jack.
Steph's a great guy. I don't care what anybody says about him. He's a good guy.
And then there's this one too.
Yep, that's the April Grade Arena cover. Which thank you so much to for who bought the art yesterday. This was the pledge we had yesterday. Somebody picked up the cover of this book. I don't like to name names, but somebody picked up this book here and the original art to the cover. So thank you so much for doing that. All the money from that cover is going towards the kids. So I am so grateful for that. It's awesome.
And so obviously you kept it really simple and to even dive into that as well, one of the things is that, and I'm torn on this, where there's obviously having a lot of choice is fun, where no doubt about it, when you have 50 covers to choose from, you can get whatever suits your boat. But at the same time, it also gets confusing. It also adds cost. It adds a lot of other issues that occur, not to mention that art can be expensive for
Yeah,
cover.
so I mean, there's the thing here that you just said it all in one big shebang. It gets expensive because you got all the different art pieces. It gets expensive because for every type of cover that you get, that is an extra print run. So instead of me, like if I would have did a trade and a virgin, I would have 8 different print runs and instead of 4. So my cost automatically goes up, and that defeats the purpose of this Kickstarter. Everybody's questioning, this and that, and it always comes back to this is why I didn't do that because this Kickstarter was solely for the purpose of getting books into kids' hands. How could I get the most books into kids' hands while also giving a selection of things? And that choice was through getting 4 different covers done, and making it simple to where we only had the trade cover. Did I want to do exclusives and do halofoils and do really cool stuff for the backers? Yes. But listen, this is issue 1. Not to say that issue 2, I don't say, hey, issue 1 was a great success. People seeing that I actually delivered the books to, Mark, because that's one of the stretch goals. We hit 5K. I'm driving to Washington, Illinois, and I'm delivering the books to Mark live. And we're going to take a live tour of the CB4K, where the magic happens, where the boxes are packaged up to send out to the hospitals. And I'm going to get the first ever exclusive interview with Mark. I called him up and I'm like, hey, man, what do you think about this idea? I think this would be fun. He's like, absolutely, let's do it. When you get a date, hit me up and we'll try to line up a date and we'll do that. And I'm like, sweet, so
So,
that's
so,
something
to,
really exciting.
so to even talk about that, because one of the things is that, I just had a guest on before you, Dustin, and, producing comics is not for people who have small budgets by definition, where it is
Yeah.
expensive to produce a comic. And there's a reason why I'm not doing it because I am running a successful eBay business and I'm looking to make a lot of money in my life. And I'm very honest about it. I'm a capitalist. And, obviously, I'm not saying I'm not charitable or anything like that, but I am looking to make money and there's nothing wrong with that. Just prefacing that. But comics typically, there's money to be made in comics, but there's also it requires a lot of money to start up. And I think you're obviously running this for a charity and trying to produce as many books as possible. So you need your costs to be as low as humanly possible. But at the same time, I think a lot of people can take a lesson from that, saying, look, maybe I don't need on my first Kickstarter to go and spend 10 grand. Maybe
Yep.
you're better off spending 5 grand or spending
Yep.
6 grand. And then if you prove the concept, maybe on your second or third issue, you start going bigger because you have more capital. Or maybe
Exactly.
you don't go bigger. Maybe that's the problem, where maybe, you know what is, maybe this is the whole problem with campaigns. I talk to people who have no money in comics, and I'm like, how do you have no money? Your second campaign did twice as much, and you come and find out, well, they did all the holofoils, they did metals, and that's where all their money went. They went from 2 covers to 4 covers, and naturally your cost goes
Yep.
up because
Well, and see, and here's the thing too. Uh, even if you do just a base cover and like a couple of variant covers, your cost going into making a 24-page comic is around 5 to 8 grand. And by that I mean you're paying your cover artist, your variant artist, you're paying for your interior art, you're paying for your flatter, your letterer, and your editor. You've got all this cost involved. So when to actually get down to the nitty gritty of it, anybody that first gets into comics, you don't make any money off of it. You don't make any money off of issue 2. You make money on issue 3 because you're selling issues 1 and 2 and 3. And the people that read 1 and 2 and thought it was a really great book told their friends. So now their friends are hopping on issue 3 and buying all 3 issues. You're selling issues at cons, and that's where you start to make your money back on it. Like, because even like with this, I ran this on Kickstarter. I made almost $4,000 on Kickstarter. I made nothing because I was $3,000 deep in art, $800 for editing, and then my print run just to print 250 books was 3 grand. So I made my money after the fact, after finally selling the last 50 books. Then I finally started to make a little bit of money back to go towards book 2, and that's the thing again. You don't make any money because you take that money that you made on book 1 that you're finally making, that you made on book 2 that you're finally making, and you put it back into your product to make it a better product. That's what it's all about, is making your product the best it can be.
yeah, and I mean it's very rare that people make money on issue 1, and
Oh yeah,
the way
absolutely.
it's done is that you have a big name, or you take a very specific, narrowly focused variant approach, and you market it the correct way, and you're good at marketing. There are ways to do it, but it's rare, and it also is a particular tactic. So if you're very good at marketing, there's a way to do it, but it's very rare, and it's very
Yeah, it's very rare. You
um.
can't be like that Brian guy that in the novel world that's like, hey, you're gonna get 8 books across the next several years, and then it does like $40 million on Kickstarter. And you're just like,
I'll give you a scenario that could work. If you understand social media and you're very good at it, and this is what you do for a living, right? And that you target big brands, and you understand how to take $1,000 and turn it into 10,000 worth of marketing, then you have a comic. You can do it. But again, you're not going to make $1 million. And also, what I think the problem is with Kickstarter is that people go and spend 6 grand to get their interior and all this stuff done. Then they raise money on Kickstarter, and they might do 8 grand, but they still have to print the book. And then they're trying to pay themselves back, and they still have to print the book, but then the printing is 3 grand, and then
well,
they're trying
and out of
to
the 6 grand, you only got 5,400 because they take 10% of it. So
see,
that
this is where
too.
it gets complicated, though, is that your printing is 3 grand. So now, out of the 8 grand that you raised, you got 7,200, right? So now you printed the book. Now you're down to 4,200. You now, with issue 2, need to find a way how to raise $1,800. And you know what it is? Even at cons, you still have to sell. You have to sell almost $2,000 so that you could pay for issue two's art. And that's the problem, is that people aren't getting enough money on Kickstarter to actually seed round issue 2. And that's the
Well,
whole.
and here's the thing too. A lot of people who run issue one don't realize you have to pay taxes on Kickstarter money. So if you don't take the money out of the Kickstarter to pay your taxes, then that's coming out of your pocket. And then the cons, that's a whole nother thing, man. Cons, you got to be a really big name or you got to get a really cheap table to make money. Because here's the sad reality of it. When I went to C2E2, it was $1,100 for a hotel for the 3 days that we were there. Then you got, your table there is like $500. Then you've got food. So all around, you're spending $2,000 to go to the con. You've got to make $2,000 before you even make a return on going there. And that's not even including the fuel. Like for us, when we drove to C2E2, it's a 5-hour drive. So that's a 10-hour round
And that's
trip.
also not including your merchandise cost either.
Exactly. So I mean, as a somebody that's an indie creator, that's in, these are all things that you have to think of, and it's really a lot of the reasons why a lot of creators go broke after issue one or issue two is they try to get themselves out there, and I'm not saying it's a bad approach, but a lot of times it just doesn't work out. People walk by your table because you're in a bad area. Maybe you're over, you're not the lucky guy that's on the corner over by the restrooms where everybody's going to go that entire day because everybody's got to go to the bathroom. You're the guy that's in the corner, the
This
furthest
is the
away
whole
from everything.
thing. So I don't know how much you know about me, but I speak about it all the time. I am what is known as a comic book investor. So I buy and sell books and I spec on books on eBay. And I'm gonna have a great year this year where I'm gonna have a very profitable year on eBay. And there's a reason why I don't feel like taking what I'm gonna make on eBay and putting it into a comic book and then running through the grind. Because it makes no
Yep.
sense to me on an economic
If
level.
what you're doing is working, why take a risk? I mean, it's like,
It's not even working. So then I take the money I make, I put it into a dividend producing stock, and then I
yeah.
get dividends as a rate of return. And it's not sexy, but guess what? I'm making money, so I
Mhm.
don't care because the rule number one is make money. Rule number two is don't lose money. There are two rules in life. Those are the two rules. Everything else is just a consequence of those rules.
Well, I'm the Great White Buffalo, man. I have two jobs. I have a full-time job that's 50 to 60 hours a week. I have a part-time job that's 8 to 10 hours. I have two kids and a wife and a yard to take care of and two cars to maintain. I have all these jobs. And then on top of all that, I am an author. I am now a charity comic writer. I also kickstarted and did a card game that I'm working on, and I'm hoping to God I get the surgery on Thursday so I can get these cards knocked out. I just haven't been able to do it because my arm hurts so bad when I'm sitting up. But my thing is I this is my escapism. You buy this book, this is now your escapism. I do it for the connections. I do it for the friendships. I do it for I do it for the connection with the fans. Just to have somebody message me or call me. I'll tell a real quick story. So I'm driving one day, I'm talking to my buddy, and I get a call from a friend that's at one of the stops. It's like 2 hours away. I drive for a living. So I'm on over the road. I'm not over the road. I come home every night, but I go 300 or 400 miles away some days. And it's in Colombia. It's 2.5 hours away. Um, this is where the stop is. One day, this guy's like, "Hey, here's my number." I gave him my number. We always chat. We hit it off. We're friends, but we've never contacted each other. And I've been at my job 9 years now. So like here it is, like 7 years we've had each other's number. We've never contacted each other, not one time. I'm driving. I'm talking to my buddy Jack, and I hear boop boop. I look over and I'm like, "Let me call you back, Jack." I'm like, this guy's never called me before. This is really strange. So to give you some like background, the night before I had a life coach on, and we were talking about suicide, and one of my things is last year, the medication that I've been on for pain causes severe depression. I got in a really bad spot last March. Like I didn't even want to live anymore. Not that I was going to go kill myself, but I made it known. I talked to my friends. I told them, I'm like, hey, I'm really down and I don't know how to get myself out of this. I talked to people. So when I had this life coach on, there was something I really hit on. I'm like, you guys out there in the audience, if you're feeling you're down, you're dark, you're really down on yourself, talk to somebody. The worst thing you can do is not talk to anybody. People are not going to look down on you. If you need help, talk to somebody. So that next day, I'm driving and that phone rang. And I hung up on Jack and I answered the phone. I said, "What's up, man?" And he said, "You really changed my life." And I said, "Excuse me?" He's like, "Look, man." He's like, I know you've been a good friend. You've always talked to me when you've been down here and we have fun. He's like, but to be honest, things haven't been really good for me. My health's been really bad. I've had some family members pass away over the last year. With COVID, all my friends quit hanging out with me. Uh, he's like, I've been in a really bad place. And I just so happened last night was the first time I logged in and watched your show and you had a life coach on. And he goes, I just wanted to let you know that you changed my life. And I think you saved my life. And you know what? Hearing that in my eyes is worth more than if I would have made $1 million. Because that's a connection that I made. It was something that, actually, to back it up, he bought a copy of my book, seen my website in here. That's how he found the show and watched that show that night. If it wouldn't have been for me selling this book to him and him looking that up and finding that show, he may have killed himself. That one phone call right there made the last 3 years of what I've been doing worth it. All the hard grinds, the days that I've gone on here that I've hurt so bad and I didn't want to sit here, but I did it because I love what I do. I love sitting here and chatting with people, talking to creators and asking questions and having fun. It made that 3 years worth it just because I saved one life. And those were the best words I've ever heard in my life. And it's the same way with fans. To have somebody call you, text you, message you, come up to you at a con and say, I really loved your book. I really hated your book. This is why. And to sit there and talk and have a meaningful conversation with somebody. I don't care if you hated my book. Tell me why. Don't just come up and be like, your book's shit. I don't like it. Tell me what you didn't like about it. Tell me what you did like about it. What do you want to see more of? What do you want to see less of? These are the conversations we should be having with people. We would have a lot greater content out there if people would, instead of saying your book sucks or your book's awesome, tell me what you
It's
like.
interesting because one of the things is that when I launched my campaign, people in the comic community attacked me when I was asking for money for my podcast. And I thought there was going to be resistance and I thought it was going to be brushed away. I didn't expect people coming up and attacking me. And here. And I was like, okay. And you're like, we think you're overpriced. We think you're this, that, and the other. And I'm like, wait a second. But I don't think I'm overpriced per se. Good media is complicated. Advertising is complicated. This is not, one and done. People saying, oh, you shouldn't be charging because you're a podcast. And I'm like, wait a second, though. You guys think that things just are free. This is a business. But they didn't give they gave a slight answer, but they only gave half the answer. So, because then I would say, okay, what do you think I should charge if I'm too expensive? And they wouldn't answer me. And if you don't answer me, we can't have a conversation. Or what don't you like about my show? So they didn't have a problem with the show. They had a problem with the money component of it. And I'm like, so you like the show, you just don't want to pay to be on my show. Explain. And the idea is that they didn't understand that I can get anybody I really want in the comic industry. And if I can't get somebody, I could find 15 other people, and I'm getting a skew of very interesting guests that are actually not comic related in the next few weeks. And I have access to a slew of interesting people as well. And at any point, if I want somebody like an eBass on my show, it's very easy for me to get it. And so, but nobody wanted to have those conversations. So I completely agree that if somebody says, Andrew, I just don't want to be paid to be on your show, but I love your show, give me a reason why. Don't just say it. Because when you give me
Dude, hey, look, this is just honest. I'm an honest person. I just say what's on my mind. And that is the one thing that pisses me off more than anything is when somebody goes, hey, I read your book. It was good. Well, what did you like about it? Oh, I don't know. What was your favorite part? Oh, I don't know. I'm like, at this point, I'm really questioning the fact that you even really read the book, that you bought it, and you told me it was good because you didn't want to hurt my feelings and you just haven't had time to read it. Like, just be honest, man. Like, if you love my book, tell me why. I want to know why. That's what it's about.
I
It's
mean, I
about the
hated your book, but
relationship.
that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. Hey, you hated my book? Good. Tell me why. Hey, you know what?
I didn't read
Feedback
it.
is feedback.
It's a joke. I didn't read it yet.
I know you didn't read it. Trust me. I know everybody that bought my book. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I really do. I mean, that's the thing. That's what's been great about doing this. Everybody that's bought the book, I'm friends with. I'm not friends with. I've created relationships with these people. We've talked about the book. And that's one thing I love, and I tell everybody, if you hated it, tell me you hated it and tell me why. I don't mind somebody saying, I hated your book, as long as you have supporting answers to why you hated it. Well, I didn't really like the way you did this. I don't like the perspective. I did like how you did this. If you did more of this, I would like the book. That's
Or somebody could
great
say, "Look,
feedback.
it's not my cup of tea. I read your
Yeah,
book. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not for me." And
yeah. But
that
just
doesn't
give
mean
me
you hate it.
things. I mean, the thing is, at the end of the day, if you like somebody as a creator and you want them to continue to create, but you want them to create stuff that you enjoy, then you need to have honest feedback. You need to tell them that what you loved and what you hated, because in turn, that creator is going to turn around and go, well, all these people said they really loved this aspect of my book, but a lot of them really hated this. Well, in book two, I'm going to make sure I don't do any of this and I concentrate more on this. And then when book two comes out and you guys are like, holy shit, this book is awesome, it's because you gave honest feedback. You gave the reasons why you hated this part and the reason why you love this part. And that's what helps us as creators to keep doing what we enjoy doing, is because, if you did just tell us, hey, your book sucked, or we liked your book, we're just going to keep going the way that we're going. We're not going to ever change anything
So
without
I have
criticism.
a slight different opinion on this, where my audience doesn't tell me who I interview as far as guests at this point. And and the reason why is that there's been a bunch of people who my audience didn't know who they were when I interviewed them, and then they became big. I'll give a perfect example. I was fortunate enough on my other show to interview Leva Bates before she became big in AEW. If my audience was like, we don't want you to interview Leva Bates or Nixon Noel, who was Tegan Knox in WWE, or Anthony Green in WWE, then those people would have never ever been, in there. So it's
Well, there's a fine line. There's a fine line. I mean, yeah,
if my
at the
audience
end of the
says,
day,
yeah.
we're gonna still do some of the things that we want to do because it's
So I'll give
our
you an
shindig.
example. If my audience said, Andrew, we love when you interview wrestlers. Can you get more wrestlers on? I'm open to that. But if you say, Andrew, I want you to only do WWE people, I don't have the access to that. So, but it's also the idea that if somebody says, I want your style to be more silly, I'm going to be like, well, you know what, that's not what the show is. So it gets tricky. But what I appreciate is that when a creator says, hey, what covers are you looking for in my book? Because that to me is not attacking the integrity of it, but it's saying, hey, what artists would you be interested in? And I've had some Kickstarters that have actually asked for suggestions, and they don't take everybody's suggestion, but and I've had other creators say, hey, Andrew, who do you like in the industry? And I'm like, well, I like Steph Wilson, I like Greg Bo Watson, I like CB Zane. I also happen to like some weird people. In the industry, where people are like, oh, I've never heard of this person. And I'm like, you haven't heard of Tristan Thomas because he's brand new, but he's very good at his job. And that he's a superstar and that he works a lot for Merck Magazine. And people are like, okay. And then it's fun when somebody's like, oh man, I took your recommendation. So I find it fascinating, but I also find that the entire comic world is, high school all over again.
Yes, it is.
And it's not a musical. It's not a musical. I
No,
promise.
no, it's not a musical.
It'd be so much better if it was. I'm just saying, you could put a nice Disney logo on it, and we could sell for millions. I was on Twitter and I saw that Ashley Tisdale stole the Met Gal, and she wasn't even there. I'm like, what the hell just happened? I thought it was the greatest trending Twitter thing I've ever seen, ever. She wasn't even at it, and she stole the Met Gal apparently. So there you go, everybody. But I digress. Um, Yeah, this is a far cry from your rewards, by the way. Far cry. This is how this entire thing goes. Usually on this show when I have interesting guests on.
Hey
But
man, I always derail. I mean, are you kidding me? If you haven't seen one of my shows, like out of like 300 shows that I've done, 310 of them have derailed. So yeah, I mean, like we totally derail, and somehow I always end up bringing it back to where we originally started, and then we continue on until we derail again, and then we hit the reverse, eventually end up back to where we were. I mean, that's what makes it fun. Nobody wants to sit here and listen to us. Well, today, guys, we're going to be talking about CatCat and Piggygirl. It's about a cat and a pig, and they give superpowers to these two kids, and then they become superheroes. The end. No, and it's all about meeting the creators. I mean, look, at the end of the day, when we go to the cons, we don't get that one-on-one experience that we want. We don't get to ask questions. We don't get to talk to the creators other than, hey, thanks for supporting my work. Here's a signature. Because there's 80 other people in line. But these online shows give us the access to come on here, ask questions, get to meet who the creators are. What else are they into? What kind of stuff do they like? What did they grow up on? What was their favorite cartoon? What was their favorite movie growing up? I mean, these are the kind of things. What inspired you to become a writer? These are the kind of things we can find out, and we can learn more about the creators and form these relationships as opposed to like the high buy
so to
relationship
even
we get
talk
at
about
cons.
that, because this is something that I think is fascinating, is that obviously Kickstarter really is personal at this
Yeah,
point.
it
And
is.
especially when you only have like 100 or even maybe 200 people, you can sort of know some people in your Kickstarter community. I had 38 backers on my project. I know all 38 of those people, and I'm in contact with them not every day, but at least every other week. So I know who all 38 of those people are, by nature. And I know some of them better than others. And obviously, if you are at a con, and if it's a small con and there's like 500 people, you can sort of get an idea and you can have personal time with people. But
Yeah.
also, it's the idea that when you're at a big con, you might not be able to have personal time with people. But what is that like? Because I've been saying this since COVID has ushered in the great digitalization pivot. Now, let me preface this because everybody, when I state it, keeps thinking that it is the idea that I think we're going into digital comics. No, 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 that's not what it is. It's the idea of selling things, whether that's yourself or your book, through digital distribution methods, such as eBay or Facebook Lives or even something like this. And so, how do you feel that that has sort of changed the game in comics? Because I have never had a table at a con. Yet since COVID, I have met more people in comics, and I think I've successfully networked without really ever going to a con, without producing a book. And I might be one of the only few who's actually done it. And I feel that like there's so many people I met. I met Chuck, I met CB Zane, I've met, a variety of other people, and I'm friends with a lot of these people on Facebook, and I speak to them almost every week now. And so I'm curious how you view that because it seems that it has changed dramatically due to COVID.
Well, it has. I mean, I started doing the whole virtual, having people on the shows, talking with independent creators and bringing them on and interviewing them and trying to do the shows and stuff like this long before COVID ever even came about. And it was like pulling teeth. All people cared about was going to the cons. Well, I got a con this weekend. I don't have time. Or I got this. I got a pack for this. I got this and that. And it was so crazy. I tried it for over a year, and I had a few people on. They got, they were small time artists. One of them went from not wanting to go live with their art to having 38,000 followers a month after we did the first show. And they're always like, hey, man, how are you doing? I still appreciate everything you've done. They're super appreciative. And I'm not, doing that to brag. It's just, it was nice to, form those relationships. And so it was crazy. Like COVID hit, and I'm like, yeah, so I'm gonna do these shows. I'm gonna bring on some of the people that worked on pieces for my book, and then like before long, I had so many people wanting to be on the show. I had to take it to 2 days a week, and then I had to take it to 3 days a week, and I was booked like 2 months out. And I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. Like it went from nobody wanted to be on to everybody was beating on the door, like, hey, I want to be on here. I want to talk about my stuff. Blah, blah, blah. Because cons aren't always something that are possible, and people didn't learn that until COVID happened and everything shut down. And they're like, what am I going to do? Because this was all they ever knew was going to a con, setting up a table, and that was how they sold their stuff and made money and got their name out there to where people could follow their website. And when a new book came out, buy it. Now it's like, there's no way for me to make new contacts. There's no way for me to sell my stuff on my website. If people don't know about it, how do I get it out there? They're sharing on Facebook. The Facebook algorithms are like, you got 3 people seeing this today, buddy, because you've been sharing it every day. And so they're like, what the hell do I do? And then they're like, oh yeah, Russell's got this show going. Hey man, can I be on your show? And so yeah, it did. It created a digital boom. And then not only did it create a digital boom, but it created an indie boom because, when Marvel and DC shut down, people are like, what the hell am I going to read now? Diamond Distributing shut down, and now DC and Marvel are reeling at the fact of how do we get our books out there because the one place that distributes our books is not operating. And we've got all these stories in the works, and now we're not making money. Now nobody's reading our books, and the people that were reading the books are like, what do we read now? And then people are like, hi, I'm over here. I make indie comics. Guess what? I'm still writing and creating and printing my own books. And people are like, oh, hey, indie creator over there. Let me check out what you got. And then people are like, holy shit, Kickstarter exists. I can buy books on here. Well, I never heard of this. Holy shit, these stories are great. And, so it created this indie boom because people realized that, hey, the indie community's been here the whole time creating awesome shit while you've been up, in the big twos, watered down 57th, reboot of Thor, or whatever. And we're creating original stories. And so, you know, I do think there's a digital boom. I mean, in so many ways. Like I said, the indie community blew up, these online shows blew up, people selling books online blew up. Like it used to be, it was hard to find, a book you were looking for. Hell, you could scroll through 3 comic book groups and find the book you're looking for in like 5 minutes. And it may not be the price you want to pay for it, but you can find it.
So let me ask you a question because obviously I'm in the spec game very much, and I have it down with certain covers, artists, certain books where there's a science to it. So I sell a lot of Zenoscope books on eBay, and when they do live streams, I know how to price a book, and I know exactly what it's going to sell for in certain price ranges, and I know how long it's going to take me to sell that book relatively, and I'm right a lot more than I'm wrong on this one. And there's certain things that just it's a science, for lack of a better word. But I do think we are in a comic bubble, and I think that the market is oversaturated. I think
It
that there's
is.
a lot of spec in play, and I think that there's going to be a rude awakening. I mean, we were in a bubble in the '90s, and I think whether that bubble is going to pop because of speculation and flipping and the fact that books are way overpriced, I think, and that we're heading into what is looking like a recession, and that people are going to not necessarily get bad assets to hold, but people are going to have less money. And then I don't know how that's actually going to translate over into the actual people who want to read it because all of a sudden when money gets tighter, things become, because to me, being on Kickstarter is, a fun thing and you want to support the book. But when discretionary income becomes tighter, you say, well, I don't need to back this project. And I'm very concerned as somebody who invests in comics because I'm starting to see it a little bit where people are not as gun ho on eBay as they once were. And so I'm curious how you feel about that because it's very alarming. And I'm seeing things, and I can't exactly pinpoint it exactly, but and maybe it's just a bad month. That could be it too. But the last 2 weeks of April were a little rough in my eBay business, and I'm
Well, we're trending into a recession, and here's the thing, books are on the rise because there's these movies coming out, and so everybody, here's the thing, there may be like, for instance, Morbius. So, Morbius, the movie comes out beforehand on eBay. There was like a handful of key books. Well, then all of a sudden you've got 400 people on there going, I got a 9.8 in the first appearance of Morbius, and I want 52 grand for it, and everybody it just floods the market. And and then you got people out there that are willing to spend the money to get it because they think that the valuation is going to continue to increase. Well, then all of a sudden it's like nobody cares because the movie sucked, and uh, spoiler alert, um, the movie
Same
sucked,
thing
and
happened to Moon Knight. Same thing happened
yeah,
to Moon Knight.
Moon Knight. I mean, it's every time a movie comes out, the Eternals. The Eternals. Everybody was gung ho about the Eternals too, and this book's gonna go places. It's going up. You better buy it now. And the market flooded, and now you can buy them a dime a dozen. I think this is what's killing the comic book industry is we evaluate keys and stuff based on whether or not it got a movie, and then the movie comes out and it flops, and then everybody's sitting on this dead book that's worth a tenth of what they paid for it. And so people are starting to become less apt to buy books that are key books because of that. And I think people are really wary of what they spend their money on because they're wanting to put their money into something that either means something to them. It's not just because it's a key book that's going to be worth a ton of money in 10 years and they can flip it. They're either looking for something that means a lot to them or they're looking for something that's low budget that is possibly going to blow up. I mean, look at me, for instance. I love Vampirella. I would have bought this book whether I knew there was a Vampirella movie coming out or not. I bought Vampirella #1, signed by Neil Adams, in an 8. And I love this book. This is like my grail book of all time. I will never sell it. I paid $1,100 for it. You cannot find a book in a 4 or 5 now less than $6,000. And part of it's just because every year Vampirella has gone up, just because it's something that's always going to be around. More people find out about it, less books are on the market, and it just keeps going on the rise. Then they announced they were making a new movie on it. So, that helped bump the prices up a little bit, but it's not like going to release anytime soon. But I think that's a book that's going to hold its value. I mean, they just celebrated the 50th
There's a
anniversary.
whole science to this, and it's the idea
Yeah,
that certain books do well always.
yeah,
And I mean, I got no problem telling people this where I'm waiting for the market to get soft, and I'm going to soup up a bunch of books. And if you are interested in holding books for 10 years, and you buy a certain book that's a good book, and is a first appearance of something over 10 years, if you buy it when the market's really soft, you're going to do okay with it. If
yeah,
you're looking to buy a book and then flip it 4 weeks later, that there's nothing wrong with that either. I mean, there's good money to be made there too. But it's the idea that I made a lot of money on a bunch of books, not because I bought it when they were, $100 and then I sold it for $400, and because I bought it, but I held on to it for 5 years, and the market was
yeah.
when I bought it. And
Well, and that's a lot of what's wrong with the market right now is people are buying to flip instantly. They're taking a huge loss on it and they're having to dump off, their books for pennies on the dollar. And, so people are really getting burnt buying these key books because they're marked up so high. I mean, to be honest, so like, Moon Knight, for instance, everybody wanted to go out and get Moon Knight. They got burned on it. And so people are like, oh, I really want to get this book. It's not really to flip it. People were going, I really need to get this book because I like this book and I want to have it in my collection forever. I better buy it before it goes from 500 to 2,000 and then from 2,000 to 4,000 and, so on and so forth. So they hurry up and they run out and buy it. Well, then, 2 weeks later, the book's back on the market for like $125 again. They're like, shit, I just took a $375 loss if I had just waited. So I think really people now in the comic industry are starting to slow down and go, all right, well, I know this book's hot right now. Let's see if it stays there before I buy into it.
And this is a good segment for me to introduce my class that's coming in October, the comic book investment system class, everybody. If you want to learn how to do this, I'm telling you, it's $100 on Udemy. It's coming. I'm building it out and I teach the basics So I will teach you how to research, how to budget, grading, and how to make exits. And I'm not telling you if you'll make money or you'll lose money, but I will tell you one thing, you will get the basic parameters of all this stuff and more. And if I get into New York Comic Con as a panelist, I will grant everybody 90% off at the day I am doing my panel, which is a comic book investing panel on New York Comic Con. I am fully submitted, fingers crossed. So if you would like to see me, everybody, go to New York Comic Con. And if I get my panel, I will grant everybody 90% off. So it's $10 to take the class if I get to New York Comic Con. And it's much needed because nobody knows the basics. It's horrific. Nobody knows
Hey
the
man,
basics.
I'm just gonna be honest. I don't buy books to make money on them. I buy books because I like them and because I love the cover and just I
But
like it.
even still, though, even still, if you're a collector, you need to know the basics. And what I mean is that, so let's say that you love Moon Knight, you need to be well aware that Moon Knight, how it fluctuates, right? Because let's say you love it and you have $500, but you know it's going to go down to 250 because that's what its pattern is. Wouldn't you rather buy the book cheaper than more expensive?
Oh
You know,
yeah,
you need to
absolutely.
understand where it's priced, whether you're paying over or how much you're paying over. You've paid maybe $20 over for a book. So if you really love a book and you pay $20, but it's not for sale, I don't really care. But if you pay $200 over, that's a problem in the long run.
Yeah, it is.
Because and whether people want to admit this or not, everybody who's a collector becomes a seller at some point. At some point, because you know what is I don't have kids yet, but let's say my kid is into baseball cards and I'm into comics. At some point, I might ask my kids, saying, "Are you interested in these comics, or should I sell them myself and give you the money?" And let's say I'm like 80 years old. It might make sense for me to get rid of my entire collection because they're not interested in that. They're interested in something else. And if I give to them and they inherit it, they're going to get 30 cents on the dollar versus me getting 80 cents on the dollar for the collection. And so these are complicated questions because, and that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm 29, so I don't have that problem yet, but that's kind of where I'm at. So yeah, so I mean, so at some point, I don't know who's going to inherit your collection or where you're going to be, but all of a sudden you might at some point be a seller, or you might want to have to trim down your collection, right? Unless I'm completely wrong.
Oh, I don't think I'll have a problem with handing my collection down. My son is way into comic books.
Fair enough, but you get the thought
Yeah, I get
process.
where you're coming from. Yeah, if there's nowhere else for the books to go, I'd rather get rid of them and make a fair amount back than to just give them away.
And what happens in me is that I all of a sudden have like 30 long boxes and I need to get rid of 5 long boxes because I just don't have the room. And so naturally, and then also sometimes somebody makes me an offer that I can't refuse. So if somebody's willing to pay really, really high value for a book, I'm willing to let it go. Or conversely, sometimes I buy a double of a book and then double of the book pays for both books, which so is fun. I like money. What can I say here? I like making money. I'm sorry. It's like a hobby for me. I
I just like making stories, man. That's my hobby. I like making and telling stories.
oh, I mean, don't get me wrong. I enjoy doing this. This is very enjoyable for me as a podcaster and talking to people. And I would do it for free, and I did for almost 9 years. And I'm at the point now where I'm like, okay, look, if I could just cover my costs, then I'm happy. It's kind of like breaking even, right? Like I'm
Yeah,
gonna ask you a question. If somebody said, hey, I'm gonna grant you a grant of $10,000, produce stories, right?
yeah,
But and then they covered all of your printing. Would you give your book away for free if it didn't cost you anything and all you had to do is write the story?
absolutely. I would. I'm different though.
No, no, no. But I've heard that from a lot of comic creators, and so my point is that if somebody said, Andrew, you need $1,000 to run your show, and then you don't need to ever ask for money from anybody ever again, and every year you don't ask for money, I'll give you $1,000 or $1,500 for what you need, and maybe you need another $500 for a little bit of marketing or to improve your microphone or your to actually buy a microphone or buy a better camera or buy better lighting, I might take that deal because now I don't have to worry about finances.
Exactly.
And so the whole thing is that because there's other ways for me to make money. Now, I would love to make millions of dollars doing this, but at the same
Million.
time, if somebody could basically say, I'll cover your costs and take care of you, I would do it that way. But that's just me. But the only reason why I ask for money is because it's a business. And I need to at least get some of my costs down. If I get 50% of my costs down with this, I'm pretty satisfied. If I get all my costs down, I'm even happier. But I digress.
I'm under attack.
Yes, I see, I see. But we've been speaking for almost an hour and a half, and I don't want to keep you here all night.
Oh, you're good, man.
I have to continue looking for a job tomorrow, but I do want to give you a chance to self promote yourself. You got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, so guys, you can check me out at Russ Explode Studios Books with Heart. I am available on Facebook. You can find me at Russ Explode Studios on YouTube or Russ Explode on Twitch. I stream to all three platforms. I do creator interviews. I've had life coaches, chefs, artists, authors, comic book creators, you name it. I will have anyone on the show that's willing to talk about their stuff and their inspirations. That's what my show is about, folks, is spreading inspiration, spreading hope, giving people a light show to watch, to come have fun, to get away from all the negativity, because God knows there's plenty of it in the world. So come in and have fun with us as we chat it up. You can also find my book, Xeno Nanite Titan, at xenonanitetitan.com, where you will also find the official t-shirts for cb4k.org. Every purchase of one of these t-shirts with the art of April Reyna, Rodney Fike, Wendy Steen Shaner, and more, all profits goes to helping send books to sick kids in hospitals and cancer centers nationwide. And you can also find CatCat and Piggygirl live on Kickstarter right now. Folks, please go back this project, even if it's only $1. That dollar will show everyone that's following you that this project is live right now. It will also help the algorithms on Kickstarter, help keep me in the top of the list. So more people, when they log on to Kickstarter, boom, there's CatCat and Piggygirl. What's this all about? And also, please share it out. Every share is worth its weight in gold. Every single purchase on this campaign the profits will go towards sending books to sick children in cancer centers and hospitals nationwide to help give them hope, strength, and inspiration in a dark time, especially now with COVID. A lot of hospitals are still under restrictions. Also, if you have a child that's 7 or 8 years old that's going through any type of chemotherapy treatment for leukemia or cancer, they're immunocompromised. They're not able to be visited by anyone. So just imagine being 7 years old and throwing up in the toilet and you're trying to hold your hair up and then that hair comes out in your hand and you're 7, you're going through all this stuff by yourself. This is why we're doing what we're doing, folks. These kids need our help. They need someone to shine a light in their life and help them feel like somebody's there for them and bring them happiness. And the sad reality of it is, folks, your donation could help a parent see their child smile for the last time. Uh, this child could get a Pez dispenser, a stuffed animal, a comic book, and just be happy. And not every child gets to go home. So be happy in knowing that your dollar may actually made a difference because 100% of this is going towards the kids. Andrew, thank you so much for having me on here to come talk about the project and just chat about comics in general. Again, thank you. I really do appreciate it. We're doing great things with this. It's about the community, and as a community, we need to start working together and building a stronger community and helping each other out.
Yeah, and then I'm just going to quickly promote myself. Obviously, all my socials, Twitter is down there, Instagram is right there, Facebook is right there. It's Pop Anime Comics. YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook or you're seeing this elsewhere, is Pop Anime Comics. So I appreciate people subscribing to my YouTube channel, liking the Facebook page, following me on Twitter, checking me out on Instagram. All that stuff matters to me. Also, obviously, use my BCW supplies code. Save yourself 10%. Because bags and boards are expensive and that code actually works. I use the code. And so if you use the code, it helps support this show and you're saving money. You're throwing some money at this show. 200 bucks gets you $20 off. So it's a decent code. So If you need supplies, please use them. They're good people at BCW Supplies. So that's two. And then obviously, I appreciate everybody sharing this out because it means a lot to me. I appreciate when people actually share out my interviews, comment on my interviews, engage with me, as well as if you want to see this show continue to go onward, I do have Buy Me a Coffee. But obviously, that's if you love the show and you want to support what we're doing here, that's a great way. And finally and foremost, I do have free comic book deals for advertising and guest spots. So if you're interested in being part of that, it is cheap deals, and I will be talking about that on Thursday if you would like to advertise on this show. Watch me Thursday, 9 o'clock, 9:10, doing a comic book hangout with some of my friends and some interesting people who may or may not show up. So keep that in mind. I might have a red apple ale in my hand while I'm doing that because it's a long week. And I have Madeline Holly Rossin on, which is Boston Metaphysical Society. So that's on Thursday at 7 o'clock. So that's a big deal for me as well. So all that's fun, but I'm going to give you the final word.
Everyone, keep supporting comics and keep supporting Rust Explode Studios because we're bringing content that'll blow your mind.
And that's a wrap, everybody.